The first actual battle that we're gonna take an eye out though is the receivers. We talked about it just a touch ago. Um, Obviously, you lose um, Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins to the draft, replacing two NFL receivers, two day two NFL receivers, and two of the probably five or six best receivers in school history, depending on where you want to put Jaden Higgins. Just based on him only being here for 2 years. Um, it's kind of they were able to replace them with guys that appear to be, as far as athleticism and ability goes, at least especially as far as athleticism goes, appear to be basically one for one replacements, with Chase Sowell being a 1-to-1 replacement for Jaden Higgins and Xavier Townsend being a 1-to-1 replacement for Jalen Noel. Will they be as good as those two? We'll have to find out. We will only find out through game reps, but if you watch their film and how they were used at their previous schools, and you look at their physical measurables, their height, their speed, things like that, and you look at their skill sets and what they're good at, you basically did about as good as you could in replacing Higgins and Noel. You did the best you possibly could in that. Obviously, Xavier Townsend knows Rocco and has played with and against Rocco in the past in high school and all that. So those guys have a good rapport. And I expect that connection, especially to be, pretty dynamic early in the season, pretty much from the get-go, I would assume, especially because Xavier Townsend is plenty athletic to be used on like end arounds and things like that, which he was used quite a bit at UCF as kind of the jet sweep kind of guy as a gadget. However, the what's after Soul and Townsend is kind of most of the question here. Let me pull up the roster here. We'll look through some of the guys and we'll talk about a few of them. Okay, so obviously you got Soul and Townsend up there. As I would assume, as of right now, barring like injury or something like that, those are going to be your number, your X and your Z, right there. Now, look at a few of these other guys here. Eli Green had a good start against North Dakota last year. What we found out eventually is that he was dealing with lots and lots of injuries, like the rest of the team. But after he had a strong game against North Dakota, and I think a lot of people were expecting him to kind of be that. If Jalen needs to come off the field, you throw Eli Green on there, and he's the same player. And he just didn't show up the rest of the season. And turns out it was because of injuries. So we'll see what Eli Green can do, where he fits. Again, that's another, like I said, he's a very similar play style and athleticism and body to Jalen Noel and Xavier Townsend. So naturally, that would be a spot where he would fit on the depth chart and within the offense. Brett Eskleton got some good time last year, just as a true freshman. So he's just going into his true sophomore this year, but he played basically every game last year, and did get a couple catches against Cincinnati, and he does again. He did get technically marked as the starter in the Miami game. So assuming that Soul and Townsend slip right into Higgins and Noel spot, Eskleton might be your third starter just right there, just based on what we saw in the Miami game. But obviously they've got different guys available on this that will be in contention there. But Eskleton's kind of a really good, solid possession type receiver, the classic white slot receiver. Obviously a little bit on the taller side for that, but kind of that. Carson Brown seems like he's been at Iowa State forever. He played even as a redshirt freshman. Kind of just a reliable possession guy, where they like to throw to him on third down and things like that over the middle of the field. I don't know if I see him being the third guy, but he'll get lots of snaps. He'll get targets and stuff like that throughout this, get a few targets a game type of thing, and be there. Dominic Overby is probably the one of the returnees that I'm looking at is like, okay, this could be the guy that we see really break out this season. He was a big time track athlete in high school. I believe he set the Utah State long jump record. Played in his redshirt games last year. He played in his redshirt games last year because he played his 4 regular season games and the postseason doesn't count. So he played in 6 games. Hey, only made the one catch, but you know, his size, he's 6'5", 200. He runs sub 11 in the 100-meter dash. He's a guy that if he can get the fundamentals down, if he can get the his craft down as far as his route running and his hands go, his ceiling is super, super high. I would absolutely expect to see him on the field against Kansas State. Maybe he's the guy that can emerge as the third starter there. But we'll have to see. But like I said, the frame and the athleticism are absolutely there to be a really, really exciting receiver. Speaking of exciting receivers, this is your dark horse for freshman that could see the most playing time, and that is Zay Robinson out of West Des Moines Valley. Zay Robinson in high school was nothing short of like electric. He was a fabulous, fabulous utility player for Valley. Um, Returned punts and kicks, was a receiver, played some corner, did a lot of different things and does them really well. He's a very high end athlete that frankly, the reason that he is maybe not at a blue blood right now and somewhere like playing for Bama or Georgia or something like that is because he had some injury problems in high school. If he can stay healthy and he can avoid those injury problems in college, Zay Robinson has absolutely every potential in the world to eventually be, I would say, it's number one receiver, be the focal point of the passing game, all Big 12 type of player. He is that athletic and that dynamic as a player. Will he play a lot early? Probably not. I mean, in camp, they could stick him back at punt and kick returner, and maybe he's electric back there. And they say, we got to have this kid back there. I hesitate to endorse putting a true freshman, like burning a true freshman's red shirt just on special teams. Like you wouldn't want to do that, but he's got the athleticism and the explosiveness where you could absolutely see, if he's just blowing people away in camp in the first few weeks of the season, when uh Arizona comes to town, maybe you see him get a few snaps and has a couple really nice plays, and all of a sudden you start seeing him more and more and more and more. I would be, if he stays healthy, I'm not sure it's I'm not sure it's even possible for him to not eventually make, crack Iowa State's starting rotation as long as he remains healthy and, keeps working on his, follows the normal development curve of a college receiver as far as, learning the offense, things like that. As long as he takes, dots his I's and crosses his T's and stays healthy, Zay Robinson is an elite dynamic athlete that will be an X factor for Iowa State at some point. How soon is going to be dependent on a lot of different things, but his health was going to be one of them. Speaking of health and needing to stay healthy, Daniel Jackson returns for this is his, I think this would be his he's a 60-year senior, I believe. Unfortunately, he was slated to be one of the, probably the third starter last year. But he tore his Achilles in fall camp. And unfortunately, the injuries have kind of been an unfortunate story of his career. Just hasn't been able to stay healthy since he came here. He came here. His freshman season was the COVID year. He was a class of 2020 guy. And you'd love to see him stay healthy and get a shot. I don't know what that looks like. Is he back enough and is he ready to really contend for the third spot in the rotation? I'm not sure. It just depends on what he's feeling like. Achilles take a long time to come back from. Like most of the time, Achilles injuries can take a year or more. We'll see if he's ready to go. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see him get playing time. He deserves it. We just got to see what he can do. Michael Parks is an interesting player. If you have played either college football 25 or 26, eventually Michael Parks can develop into a really nice receiver for Iowa State. We haven't seen him a ton on the field so far in his early in his career. He redshirted 2023, didn't play at all last year because he was injured, but yeah, he's an athletic guy. We will see where he can end up, We literally have not seen him on the field um, yet. So if he can stay healthy, maybe he's a guy that can start eventually working his way into the rotation. A few other guys, kind of some walk-ons: Carson Robbins, Wyatt Archer, Jonathan Vandewall, Karan Brookins, Sam Zelenovich, um, Dylan Malone, Ty Claiborne. Not hating on any of these guys, but these guys I think have work to do to get into the rotation. If you're asking me to pick somebody right now to be the third guy, like this is who's going to be the third receiver, be the Y, I would guess probably Brett Eskelson, just based on him starting the Miami game. But Dominic I would say Eskelson and Overby are probably the two clubhouse leaders for that Y spot. But it's hard to say. I guess right now we just they're both young. They both haven't played a ton, and they both have the ability and the athleticism to be there. We just have to see more, and we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, either way, Iowa State runs out, eight receivers in a game, most games. So it's kind of one of those where you're just, everybody's going to get some run at some point. But I think right now, if I were to put money on it, it's going to be Sol Townsend and either Eskelson or Overby. But I would say maybe 50.1% Eskelson.